There was once a woman named Elise. She lived in a seemingly perfect marriage, with a caring husband, Mark, and a beautiful home. But beneath the surface of her life lay a discontent she couldn't ignore. Despite the love Mark showed her, Elise felt an unquenchable desire for excitement, something forbidden. And so, she found herself slowly drifting towards her cousin, Ethan, whose charisma and charm had always intrigued her. They met at a family gathering, where Elise's heart raced as their eyes locked for a moment too long. It started innocently, casual chats and lingering glances, but soon enough, she felt consumed by an obsession she couldn't explain or control. As time went on, they began sneaking out to meet in hidden places, and the thrill of their secret affair took hold of her in a way she could never have anticipated. Elise thought she was clever. She thought no one could ever find out. Her husband was busy with work, and her family never suspected a thing. Her double life became a whirlwind of lies, each one more elaborate than the last, and every time she and Ethan met, it felt like she was stepping further away from the woman she once was. She was playing with fire, and deep down, she knew it, but karma has a way of creeping up on those who tempt it. Slowly, her relationship with Mark began to deteriorate. She grew distant, dismissive of his love, and irritated by his constant devotion. Mark, unaware of her betrayal, started feeling like he was losing his wife, but couldn't quite figure out why. Friends and family noticed the changes too, whispering behind closed doors about the tension between them. One day, Mark stumbled upon something he shouldn't have. Elise had left her phone unattended, and a message popped up from Ethan, filled with words that could only mean one thing. Mark's heart shattered as he read the words that exposed her betrayal. The man who had dedicated his life to Elise, who had trusted her completely, was now faced with the ultimate betrayal. Mark was devastated, yet strangely calm. He knew what he had to do. Without a word to Elise, he gathered evidence and met with a lawyer, preparing to end the marriage that had defined his life. Elise, sensing something was wrong, tried to manipulate the situation, feigning innocence and attempting to guilt Mark into staying. But he was resolute. The love he had once felt for her was replaced by a cold, bitter disappointment. The divorce proceedings began, and Elise found herself blindsided. Mark's departure was swift and decisive, leaving her alone in the home they had once shared. The life she had taken for granted was now crumbling before her eyes. Her friends turned against her, choosing Mark's side, and her family refused to support her once they learned of her affair with Ethan, condemning her betrayal. As the reality of her choices settled in, Elise's financial situation quickly spiraled out of control. She had been dependent on Mark's income, and without his support, she was left to fend for herself. Desperation crept in, and the weight of her decisions bore down on her, crushing the confidence and arrogance that had once fueled her actions. In her darkest moments, Elise was left with nothing but regret. Her mind, once consumed by excitement, now harbored only bitterness and guilt. She became isolated, plagued by thoughts of her lost marriage, her destroyed friendships, and the financial ruin she now faced. Depression took hold of her, pulling her into a deep, relentless despair. Her once vibrant life was now a shadow of what it had been, a testament to the choices she had made. But karma wasn't done with her yet. One day, as she scrolled aimlessly through social media, she stumbled upon a photo that would become the final blow. There, smiling and happy, was Mark with her best friend. They looked carefree, wrapped in each other's embrace, as though they were made for each other. Elise felt a sharp pain, one that resonated with the betrayal she had inflicted on him. In that moment, she understood. She had lost everything, and now her ex-husband had found happiness again, with the very friend she had confided in. It was the ultimate form of justice, a poetic end to the life she had destroyed with her own hands. Overwhelmed by rage and sorrow, Elise spiraled deeper into despair. The thought of Mark moving on with her best friend felt like a cruel twist of fate, a punishment she couldn't bear. Every memory, every moment they'd shared now seemed like a lie, and she felt betrayed by the one person she thought would always stand by her. She spent nights replaying everything in her mind, the regrets piling up like weights on her chest. But there was no one left to turn to. Her friends had distanced themselves, her family disapproved of her actions, and Ethan, the man she had risked everything for, had vanished as soon as her life began to fall apart. She was left alone to pick up the shattered pieces of her life, haunted by the choices that had led her here. The thrill, the secret meetings, the rush of being with Ethan, it all felt so meaningless now, replaced by the hollow realization of what she'd lost. Days bled into weeks, and Elise's life became a cycle of loneliness and regret. Her financial struggles worsened as she found it harder to focus on work, and eventually, she lost her job. Bills piled up, and she was forced to move out of the home she had once shared with Mark. She found herself in a small, dim apartment that mirrored the state of her mind, cold, empty, and filled with echoes of what could have been Dot. As she sank deeper into depression, Elise tried to reach out to Mark, hoping for some semblance of closure, maybe even forgiveness. But he remained distant, unwilling to let her back into his life. His happiness with her former best friend was apparent, and though it pained her, Elise realized that he had found peace, a peace that she had shattered. In her isolation, Elise began to confront the truth. She had been selfish, reckless, and blind to the love and stability Mark had offered. She realized, too late, that her search for excitement had been a desperate attempt to fill a void that only she could understand. The affair had been a choice, but the consequences, the loneliness, the financial ruin, the mental anguish, were now beyond her control. Months passed, and Elise withdrew from the world. She stopped reaching out to friends, avoided family gatherings, and spent most days in a haze of sadness and regret. Her once vibrant spirit had faded, replaced by a quiet resignation. She had no one to blame but herself, and the weight of that realization felt heavier with each passing day. One evening, as she sat alone in her apartment, Elise decided to write a letter to Mark. She poured out her heart, admitting her mistakes, apologizing for the pain she had caused, and expressing the deep remorse she felt. She knew he might never read it, but the act of writing felt like a small release, a way to confront her own demons. In the end, Elise found herself at a crossroads. She could let the guilt and regret consume her, or she could try to rebuild her life, piece by piece. The road ahead was uncertain and filled with challenges, but she knew she had to face it alone, bearing the scars of her choices as a reminder of the price she had paid for her actions. And as she took her first steps forward, Elise realized that karma had, indeed, run its course. She was left with the fragments of a life she had shattered, and the only path left was one of self-reflection, humility, and the desire to become someone worthy of forgiveness, even if it took a lifetime to find it. In the solitude that followed, Elise struggled to accept the depth of her losses. She felt haunted by her mistakes, each day waking up to the stark reality of what her life had become. She spent countless nights staring at the ceiling, replaying every decision, every lie, every hurtful word. Memories of Mark's kindness, his unwavering support, and the love they once shared felt like ghosts that lingered in every empty room, whispering of a life she had thrown away. The anger she had once felt toward her ex-husband and her best friend began to dissolve. Instead, she found herself overcome with a painful sense of understanding. She realized that their happiness, though painful for her to witness, was something she could not begrudge. They had both been by her side when she had been at her best and her worst, and she had driven them both away with her selfish choices. Seeing them together was painful, but it was also a reminder of what she had lost by betraying those who had truly cared for her. Elise knew that forgiveness from others might never come, and that realization forced her to confront the one person she had avoided facing, herself. For the first time in her life, she stopped running from her feelings, from the inner void that had driven her to seek excitement in destructive places. She began to accept the painful truth that her affair had never been about her husband, her marriage, or even Ethan. It had been about her insecurities, her fears, and her unwillingness to face the unhappiness within herself. Determined to find a way forward, Elise took small, difficult steps toward healing. She began to read books on forgiveness and self-acceptance, desperate for guidance on how to mend her fractured spirit. Therapy sessions became her lifeline, and she found solace in speaking with someone who could help her untangle the mess within her mind. Every session peeled back layers of guilt, shame, and regret, exposing the raw wounds she had tried so hard to hide. It wasn't easy. Every day felt like a battle, and there were moments when she wanted to give up, to sink back into the darkness that had consumed her. But something inside her refused to let go. For once in her life, Elise was determined to become someone she could be proud of, not for others, but for herself. She wanted to be someone who could face the world with honesty, someone who could live with the choices she had made, and someone who could find peace, even if it took years to achieve. Over time, her perspective shifted. She began volunteering at a local community center, where she worked with people facing their own struggles. Helping others brought a sense of purpose to her life, a purpose she had never known before. She found herself feeling connected to people in a way she hadn't in years, and slowly, she began to feel a sense of belonging that had been missing from her life for so long. Though she still felt the weight of her past, Elise learned to carry it with grace. She knew the scars would always be there, reminders of the choices that had brought her to this point. But she also knew that those scars were part of her journey, a testament to the strength she had found in rebuilding her life from the ground up. One day, as she walked through the city streets, Elise caught a glimpse of Mark and her former best friend. They looked happy, at peace, as though they had found a happiness she had never been able to give him. For the first time, instead of pain, Elise felt a quiet acceptance. She whispered a silent apology, wishing them the happiness she had once tried to sabotage. In that moment, Elise realized that true freedom didn't come from forgetting the past. It came from embracing it, from learning to live with the mistakes, and using them as a foundation for a better future. She would carry her lessons with her, and though the road ahead was still uncertain, she walked it with a newfound sense of purpose, a purpose that no one could ever take away. With her newfound perspective, Elise began to cultivate a life rooted in humility and self-awareness. The path was neither easy nor straightforward. Every day brought new challenges that tested her resolve. Yet, she had developed a quiet resilience, an acceptance that allowed her to confront life's difficulties with a sense of accountability she had never felt before. Her work at the community center grew into a source of comfort and stability. She volunteered with people from all walks of life, individuals who had endured hardships that made her own struggles feel small. Listening to their stories of perseverance and hope brought her closer to understanding the complexities of human nature and her own journey of redemption. Slowly, the connections she formed filled the void that had once driven her to seek validation in reckless places. Over time, Elise even began to form friendships. These weren't friendships built on shallow commonalities, but on shared experiences of growth, forgiveness, and resilience. They saw her for who she truly was, scars and all, and in their company, she learned to value honesty and authenticity. With their support, she felt a glimmer of happiness she hadn't known in years, a joy that stemmed not from secrecy or deceit, but from openness and vulnerability. Financially, life was still a challenge. She lived modestly, often counting every penny to make ends meet. Gone were the days of luxurious dinners and spontaneous shopping trips. But Elise no longer resented her situation. She had grown to appreciate the simplicity of her new life, finding satisfaction in small victories, like being able to afford a book or enjoying a peaceful walk in the park. The material comforts she had once clung to now felt irrelevant compared to the inner peace she was building. Months turned into years, and Elise's journey toward healing took her to places she had never expected. She began sharing her story with others, speaking openly about her mistakes, her regrets, and the lessons she had learned. Her honesty touched those around her, inspiring them to confront their own challenges with courage and self-compassion. She became a mentor for others at the community center, guiding them through their own struggles with the wisdom she had earned the hard way. In sharing her story, Elise found a new sense of purpose. She had spent so long wallowing in shame, thinking her mistakes defined her. But now, she understood that they were merely chapters in her life, chapters she had the power to rewrite. Her story became a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, a reminder that even in the face of our worst choices, we can find redemption if we are willing to take responsibility and change. One afternoon, Elise received an unexpected message. It was from Mark. Her heart raced as she opened it, unsure of what to expect. His words were simple yet filled with compassion. He told her he had seen the changes she had made, that he respected her for facing her past and finding a way forward. He didn't offer forgiveness outright, but his message carried a sense of closure that she hadn't realized she needed. Mark's acknowledgement lifted a weight she hadn't even known she was carrying. She felt a sense of peace settle over her, knowing that, while they could never return to what they once had, there was no longer bitterness between them. It was a quiet ending, free from drama or resentment, a final goodbye to the life they had shared, a life that had shaped them both in ways neither could have anticipated. Elise continued to move forward, embracing the life she had created. She no longer felt haunted by her past, no longer trapped by the mistakes she had made. Instead, she felt a sense of freedom, a lightness that came from knowing she had done the work, faced her demons, and emerged on the other side. And as she looked out onto the world, Elise felt grateful. Grateful for the second chance she had given herself, grateful for the wisdom she had gained, and grateful for the peace she had found. She had learned that life's greatest lessons often come from our darkest moments, and that true happiness isn't found in the thrill of secrecy, of the rush of forbidden love, but in the quiet contentment of a life lived with integrity and purpose. As the years passed, Elise's journey continued to evolve. She dedicated herself to helping others and, in doing so, discovered a deep, sustaining joy. The community she had built became her family, offering her a place where she was valued not for her past, but for the person she had worked so hard to become. She had transformed, becoming a beacon of hope for those facing their own struggles. On a quiet evening, Elise found herself reflecting on her journey. She realized that her greatest accomplishment was not in the material things she had once coveted, but in her ability to change, to find resilience in the face of hardship, and to inspire others to rise from their own mistakes. She knew her life was now one of honesty, growth, and purpose, a life she could be proud of, and so, with a sense of peace, Elise closed this chapter. Her story was a reminder that while life might lead us down dark paths, there is always hope for redemption and the possibility to rebuild, no matter how broken we may feel. Thank you for watching this story of resilience and redemption. If you enjoyed this journey, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more captivating stories like this one. Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you. And remember, no matter where life takes you, it's never too late to start again.